Hello, everybody. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to another episode of the Life in Estonia podcast. Today, I have here with me is Vladislav Virtonen. I pronounced this right?
Yes, you
Yeah,
did.
great. Vladislav is probably the youngest guest I've had on my podcast so far. He was born and raised in Estonia. He's actually from Sillamäe in Ida-Virumaa. He's currently a second year student at Minerva University in California. He's a co founder of a network of coding schools in Estonia and Ukraine called EDUKOHT. Um, he recently completed his internship at the Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs in cyber diplomacy, and he's currently working as a data analyst in Argentina, from where he is speaking right now. So, in the time that he has been, he has traveled a lot. He has lived in the US, South Korea, Taiwan, and India, which are all very, very different countries. And I'm very interested about his experience in such different cultures. So, welcome aboard, Vladislav. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Mana. Very blessed, very grateful. Happy, wishing everyone who is listening a happy morning and a happy part of the day that you're
Mhm.
listening this in from Argentina.
Uh, w-
Surprisingly,
what time is
it
it there
is
right now?
winter.
Oh,
It
is it?
is
Is it?
9
Oh, wow.
a.m. and it is my first winter in June, and I'm happily drinking mate. This is a traditional Argentinian drink from
Mm-hmm,
herbs.
mm-hmm,
Uh,
mm-hmm.
yeah,
Is
I'm
it
very grateful to be here.
is it more like tea or something else?
It's rather like tea, it's extremely
Oh.
similar.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Vladislav, first, I think there's a lot to talk about, and I think what I would like to begin by is your early life growing up in Estonia. If you can tell a little bit about that, because you mentioned that in previously to me as well, what were the challenges growing up and how those challenges shaped you? So let's talk a little bit about you and your earlier life.
Oh, there were a lot. Yeah, I grew up in Lasnamäe in Tallinn. In well, okay, for a majority of our audience, I don't need to explain the connotation and the complexity of that place.
I think it's better if
But
we explain a little bit because there are some international audience as well. So if you can talk a little bit
right,
about that.
yeah, in Estonia there's ethnic majority, ethnic Estonians, and there's ethnic minority. The biggest one, 20 something percent, is Russian-speaking people, and then there are other minorities that are, according to previous census, less than like 2%. So these are the two biggest ethnic groups that we're working with. And guess what? There is segregation. Segregation exists within Tallinn, within the capital, um, and Lasnamäe is known to be one of the most Russian-speaking districts. Um, yeah. And then there is another part of Estonia, northeast region, very close to the Russian border, called Ida-Virumaa, also one of the most segregated regions. And that's where I spent the second half of my life. So yeah, my childhood began there, and I come from a very low social class. I come from a family that always struggled financially, where we lived always like kissing the poverty line, basically, going under it, going a little bit above it, but always living in that area. And then there were all of the social challenges that come with that, you know, having to navigate public education. It was always like this combination of like segregation, a bunch of bullying at school, which a lot of people experience. Like statistically, unfortunately, Estonia still struggles with it a lot. And yeah, then as I got more and more education towards the end of primary school, I realized, wow, I'm in a bubble. Because there was this incredible thing called Veni Vidi Vici, the internal Estonian exchange program where you could swap a school. Uh, and in ninth grade, I said, okay, let's do it. uh, and I went to south of Estonia to Viljandimaa, to live there in a like a school with a dorm, and I realized, wow, I was all my life in two of these places in Estonia, completely isolated in in such a bubble that I couldn't even, communicate enough in Estonian to make friends with the rest of the country. Like, and then I returned, and then I said, okay, high school, like ninth grades is everything for primary school. Ninth grade, we're done. The building is closed for us. Like, we need to go find another high school. That's how it was in Sillamäe, where I finished primary school. And then I said, okay, for high school, I'm going to an Estonian speaking school. So I went to study in Narva. Uh, yeah, and from there everything went up. Everything went up. There I discovered also Erasmus projects, thanks to my friend, and thanks to an incredible NGO we have in Narva called Vita Team that opened my my perspectives like this. That conduct free, basically short-term youth exchange projects and training courses, which means that for me, as a that time 15, 16-year-old, I could just hop into one of their meetings in Narva. They said, "You want to go?" I said, "Where? Go what?" Okay, let's go. And for 1 week, we went to South Estonia with Hungarians and Greeks, three groups of people, and we learned something about the refugee crisis. That was a big topic at that time. And it was completely funded. It was by the EU Commission, I guess. Uh, and it was completely free for us. And that's when I got my first exposure to like the international world, and I realized, wow, I'm moving above. Even though I am, like now at that moment I already like spoke Estonian and Russian. Uh, I realized, wow, I'm in a bubble again, but this time in the bubble of Estonia, because it's also a tiny country. Like, what happens if I go abroad? And then I just kept hopping between Erasmus projects, and my grandma always valued my education. Like, she said, the one who raised me. She said, "You wanna go swim? Go swim. You don't wanna go swim? Well, you still go. It's an important skill." Or like music school. You don't wanna finish it? Well, still you gotta do it. You gotta have skills. You gotta have different hobbies. You don't know how to do stuff with hands? Go to a woodmaker club. Go make something out of wood for a year. So
Mm-hmm.
I really am thankful to her and to all of the incredible opportunities that we had in that small town of Sillamäe. Sillamäe is 10,000 people. And for background, it is the most segregated town in Estonia because it has about 95% Russian speaking people only. There is really nothing else there. No one else there.
So I think I would because I've heard from a lot of people, especially youngsters, who have struggled with this like transition between getting out of their bubble. Uh, like the first bubble that you talked about is that uh, this segregation where you are primarily not dealing with anything Estonian, not, you're struggling with language as well, and then you break that bubble and you get more, you know, into Estonia. So what do you think, because you have broken that bubble and you have kept moving on, what would you say to those uh, youngsters, like similar to your age, who are currently struggling with this? Because obviously learning language is one thing, but also feeling that you are somehow not accepted or separated is another thing. So how did you overcome that, and what is your advice to people, to youngsters especially, who are struggling with it?
If I, okay, if they were listening to this,
Hmm.
I would say be bold and take all of those free language opportunities and do Erasmus exchange. Do those free Erasmus projects, go abroad for free, study there, live with people of your age, learn about something important for the EU at the moment, and there you will just have to speak. You know, you're just surviving there in the middle, like in a village in France. There's a bunch of foreigners. You have to speak. You know, you have to survive. You have to eat. So it's a perfect growth opportunity. It's for you. It's free. It's in most youth, like a lot of youth center. Even schools do those exchanges. You must have heard of it. Use those opportunities. They are for you. Like it's hard to make the first step, of course. And I would say just reach out to me. You can find me by my name in Instagram and Facebook, anywhere. Feel free. Um, I'll either connect you with someone or give advice I have. You're not alone. But in reality, man, and nobody, like not many people will, from my age who are segregated will listen to this podcast. First, because they're segregated. Second, because their English level is lower. And third, because their education level is lower. Like I don't know if you've seen the recent statistics that the Ministry of Education has shared a few days ago that 13% of people who finish Russian-speaking primary schools, 13% reach higher education
Mm-hmm.
stage, and that's completely sad. Like
Mm-hmm.
I thought about this, and I was like, should I be proud that I made it here? But no, it's completely devastating. Like it's so sad to be one of those 13%
Mm-hmm.
because it means I'm a minority again, and because it means that our system is really still failing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, man, and the reality is that yeah, on the like it's so complex that on the side of culture, you said people will not feel, you know, accepted because yeah, we have this incredible ethnic identity, like group identity divide, which is based on language. If your native language is Estonian, you can be Estonian. If your native language is not Estonian, you will never be like truly accepted as Estonian. On social side, you don't have as many mobility opportunities if you didn't get proper education. You cannot get outside of the region. You're stuck with the same people who keep giving you simple jobs, right? Um, on the language side, it's also your limitation, and yeah, it's extremely complex. Then, if you don't have enough education, it's a completely different lifestyle. You know, you don't go
Yeah.
listen to podcasts in free time.
Yeah.
You might be doing something else.
But since you are here, then and you you were able to overcome that, what are like what is preventing people from getting education? Like you said that it's 13% pass rate. But what is preventing people? Because education is of course free, right? You don't need to pay for education. Um, what prevents people?
We should definitely run some causal study on this to find out some of the causes and conceptualize them. And I don't know. Really, no one knows. There is not a lot of research, literature on this in Estonia. But there are some general things that prevent people that are roadblocks in general. And one of them is um, what is it called? Like poverty tunnel, like uh, poverty vision, or what is it called? It's like it's a combination of all these complex things that interact together. It is if you come from a lower social economic background, you have lower economic opportunities. You're usually making minimum salary or less. If you're retired early, you don't even get minimum salary. And there, right now with inflation and rising prices for everything, you have to pay the bills. You And because of lack of education, you might have taken a loan, or you don't know how to manage your finances well. You are convinced that you're poor. Then, on the social perspective, there is not a bunch of cohesion. This is not a very well like super welcoming and warm kind of culture, where you can go approach anyone and say, "Hey, I have this emotional problem," and ask for help. That was never the mood in my primary school. My primary school was very much like, when I look back, I'm I don't know, of course, like my memories are not exactly correct, like they have changed over time. Uh, but they're so sad. Like there was such a, of course, like 13, 14 is the greatest amount of bullying that we have, and teenage suicide is insane. But also how people are, like, especially people who live in this like post-industrial, post-Soviet like cultural space, people who don't acknowledge emotional IQ, like understanding what people feel or trying to understand what they go through or trying to support them. It's not a thing. Like, I just saw a course on like emotional first aid, when people are in like an emotional crisis. I've never heard of this. Like, maybe it's not, why have I never heard of this before? Like, I just started my university. Those people were like, yeah, it's super important. All people from like Western Europe, from the US, they're like, yeah, I've taken these courses before, and I'm like, where were they in Sillamäe? So there's this aspect. Then there's language, right? If you have studied, so you said their education is free. There's lots of school. There is, but the quality is extremely hard to measure. Also, like you have these simple metric that like simplify all of the complexity of education and into scores on the final exams. And those are how our schools are ranked. The best schools have the best final exams and so on. But is it really a great measure of how people are involved, how many opportunities they have on the way? And yeah, and then there's this distribution of, because we're extremely urbanized, we have like 90% of Estonia lives in cities or so. We have all of the opportunities concentrated in big cities, in Tallinn, in Tartu, some opportunities in Pärnu and Narva also, Vilnius, you mean. Only bigger cities. You have all of the talent there, and I don't know, if you're an aspiring IT student in fifth grade and you want to know something about coding, well, if you are growing up at my age in Sillamäe or Narva, good luck. You were on your own. There were really no opportunities to learn basic coding except like basic courses in two schools in Narva that existed at that time. That's all. Like you were just unlucky that you were born, 200 kilometers to the east instead of Tallinn, where all of the talent is and it's accessible. So there's that level of roadblock as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of relate so much to that in that way that like we all often sort of forget the cards that we are handed out when we are born. Like a lot of things that we are handed are, I would say majority of the things that are handed to us are not in our control. Like for example, where you're born or which family that you're born to. Like these are the things that you're like, you don't choose them, like, right? So for example, if you're extremely talented, you're extremely hardworking, uh, you're a genius like Elon Musk, but you're born in North Korea, what are you going to do? I mean, you're an extremely talented female girl that can do amazing things, but then you get born in like a rural Pakistan where girls are not allowed to get education. So I mean, it's a lot of these things are given to us that like which are out of our hands, and that is why I think that is one of the bigger reasons why success for everyone is different, because a lot of times people feel that like where your starting line was, that was like my starting line was, I don't know, like way before that as well, the place where you started your life from. So I think it's very important to acknowledge these facts as well, because in our culture, especially that the culture that we see, it's very easy to compare yourself to others. It's very easy. But to see where a person started from and where they are and how far they have come, I think it's very important to acknowledge that as well, and to acknowledge for yourself as well.
It is. It is.
Um, I would like to talk about your EDUKOHT? Is it an NGO? Is it a company? Is it schools? How did you start this? What encouraged you, and what exactly does it do? Can you tell more about that?
Sure. Here, first of all, I'm giving tribute to the three co-founders that we started it with. There were four of us in total, and two of them are still actively and amazingly working on it, expanding it, improving it, and doing an incredible job in Estonia and in Ukraine. So kudos to them. I am at the moment not active there. So first of all, just wanted to acknowledge this. That at the moment I'm focusing on different opportunities, and now I'm telling the beginning story. It was in Narva. It was in 2020, a little bit before before COVID started. I already told you about the problems of like an imaginary fifth grader who wanted to learn basic coding and couldn't do it. That was the case in Narva. That was from the perspective of a young kid. Now, there was a second problem that we also saw. Um, so from the four co-founders, three of us were in high school. One of them was in Narva College in university, and we had our friends who studied coding in university and just knew it, studied it themselves online or something in high school. And we saw those friends, and some of them really had to, with their like basic coding skills, had to go work in, guess where? McDonald's, Hesburger. And it was so sad. Like these are not the specific examples, but like retail or food. Like there were no opportunities for them to apply their skills. Um, and we thought, hmm, kids cannot learn basics, and university students cannot find a job. They have to go, to talent to get their first internships or experiences. What do we do? So we came up with this model where we hire um, young people who can code from universities and high schools. We make sure that they know how to teach all of the pedagogical side, and they run a coding club or like basic coding intro courses for the small kids who who want to learn basic coding but don't have that opportunity in their schools. And um, because we had to sustain it, we sold it as a service to the parents at first, and then we realized, wow, there are parts of population in Narva who couldn't pay. What do we do? So we found some extra funding from the municipality, from the US corner, and from Startup Estonia, and from other sponsors who supported us and made sure that we're also accessible to all. And that's how we got our social enterprise element of it. So yeah, that's the model. Then we expanded it to Kohtla-Järve, then to Tallinn, then to Tartu, and now to Ukraine, a few cities also.
That's pretty amazing. And like, what has been your learning experience while doing that? Like, how has that founding that and starting something from new changed you?
I am extremely grateful for this experience. I feel like it was one of the most crucial experiences in my life to just start something because like at partly I was also moved to hop on and do it with my amazing co-founder was because I didn't have anything else to do myself, in Ida-Virumaa at that time I was applying for all of the things that there were in that CV website, cv.ee. I was applying to random bookstores, to random stores to just have something because I already like was kind of old enough to do something on my own, and I had to also contribute to the family so that we can pay the bills and like eat better food. But I couldn't. Really, literally, all of the bookstores, all of the places, all of the everything rejected me. So the only thing was left to do, if you cannot find, an employment opportunity, which there are very few of, is to create your own. Um, and it was really a very steep learning curve, because starting something like this, all you need really is just kind of passion and, yeah, your own like internal energy, because you can learn all of those things with our amazing digitalized services. You can learn to navigate them with our free consulting by the tax board. And taxes are difficult to navigate at first, but you can do it. You have like free support for that. You have just a chat window in the tax board self-service website. You can ask them everything. Um, yeah, and everything else is just about how you navigate people. Like we gladly already had some base, like people knew us from other local projects. Um, I mean parents, so they kind of already trusted, like had some level of trust. And then it's just cool. Like people appreciate what you do, especially in Narva. Like people see, oh, you were doing a coding school. You started a business. There is no competition. There are really no previous examples of anything similar. So whatever you start, people appreciate and people support as much as they can, like of course. And it's for myself, it was a very steep learning curve for everything, because it was a 4 people team at first, and we hired more people and expanded. But at first, it was the 4 of us navigating everything from client communication, marketing, to finance, taxes, media, communication, everything. And it was my great, great time of learning how to do basic taxation, how to do meeting documents from our imagined social, because business is a social construct, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of papers that are digital. They're not even physical, that you submit somewhere. And based on that, the court grants you like a registry code, and then you connect a bank account, which is also digital. Like it's none of it is real, and it's very cool to navigate all the system and conceptualize it at first. And it was very empowering. Like after that, I felt like we got an incredible amount of recognition, for which I'm very grateful. And I feel like it was a great boost for me, that kind of was like the crucial evidence that even coming from Ida-Virumaa, coming from the backgrounds that we had, from the complex and uh, challenging region that we come from, we can start a business, we can operate, and we can scale it. And we could do it during COVID. Like we started it, and 1 week after COVID started, businesses around us were closing. We managed to survive, and it was a great, great, happy, and also extremely difficult on the way learning experience.
Um, One thing that you said sort of like stick with me is that you mentioned that there were no opportunities, right, at that time for somebody to learn coding, and that's why you started it. But then again, when you started it, there was no competition, and you got like immediate recognition as well. So I think this is a very important point for that I have learned over the years as well in my life, that like every adversity has it in itself an opportunity lying within it, right? There is no adversity without opportunity. Like for example, I'm from Pakistan, and we have like such huge numbers of people who are illiterate, and there is a huge number of people who there's a lack of like banking finance awareness. There is a lack of like free education, there is a lack of water. And then on one hand, this thing can like disappoint you, and it can make you discourage you, and then say, okay, there is no way that we can fix that. But on the other hand, if you think like an entrepreneur, like you did, then you think like there is a open green field, like there is an opportunity, like a huge opportunity for things to take off, and there is no competition there. So I think one of these, it's a very important thing to learn, to look at the both sides of everything, like this duality of um yeah, I'm a lot interested in this, like Eastern concepts of like dualism and all that. But so let's talk, move more towards that, your experience abroad. So you have lived in India, you have lived in South Korea, right? You have lived in the US. Now you're living in South America. I can't think of any more diverse thing. Like, I think the only thing probably that the only bigger world that you haven't seen probably would be China or Southeast Asia, but you have covered the spectrum very widely. Like, this is this sounds almost strategic, but tell me a little bit about your experiences abroad in US. So step by step, where you moved first, and then how was it going there? Your initial cultural shock, and how you navigated it, coming from, like a small village in Estonia all the way to, these countries where people probably haven't even heard of Estonia.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people have not. No, like unfortunately, I have not lived in any and studied in any African country yet. That's still on my like personal list because our university doesn't have a location there. And in terms of China, I haven't got to access it. It was very closed when I was
Hmm.
nearby, but I studied for semester in Taiwan, in Taipei,
Oh.
which is like the rebellious group from former
Mm.
China that separated. And go, woo, for them.
Hmm.
And yeah, so everything started kind of with so okay, all of the opportunities I'm mentioning here, like Erasmus and that NGO in Narva and starting your own business, they're free. So in case somebody is listening from a region or somebody who wants more opportunities, they are all free. Starting our own business, we had zero in our account. We didn't start with any amount of money, only some friends, only some social network. So yeah, back to this. In high school, I was going to this English and American culture after school course club called Access. It's funded by the US Embassy and it exists. It changes. Like every 2 years, they take turns in different Estonian town cities. That time I was in Sillamäe. They were opening it and they invited all of the US officials from the embassy. One of them gave me like this paper pamphlet about Flex. Now, what is Flex? It's an exchange program for high school. It recently, 2017, I think, 16, expanded into Estonia too. There are like 20 something countries participating in it. It's a free 1 year exchange for Estonian high school students to go to the US to study there in high school, to live in a local host family, and to go back. And it's fully funded. It caught my eyes in those like language classes we were attending. I said, well, I already did like the small internal exchange within Estonia. It was amazing. I said, okay, my next growth step would be to do a bigger exchange. Why not? So that was like the biggest exchange opportunity that was hard to leave home. And of course, like there's almost no family in Estonia that would say, go anywhere. You're 17, go to the other side of the world, enjoy. It was very hard to leave. Like nobody, like my grandma at least didn't want to let me go. Um, but yeah, that was an insane growth opportunity as well to be in a completely new environment and see how I navigate that. And then I returned back home, and within the alumni community of that exchange, Minerva is the university I'm attending currently. It's the global I guess, Immersion University. Um, it was very popular among the finalists of that program. So, like a lot of students who finish that flex exchange and the end of high school apply to Minerva too. Like it's a common trend. Yeah, and the reason I am everywhere right now is just because of my university. My university works so that every semester we have to be in a different country. So we are 4-year bachelor's program, and um, we have 7 locations where our university is in the world. And it works so that it's called global rotation, where like if a class that was older than us was, for example, in Seoul in South Korea, then they go on to, let's say, Buenos Aires, and we take their place, and we keep rotating like this. So, and it's based in San Francisco, so that's where we always start, and that's where we will graduate to. And it has been so far 2 years, and a very, very insane experience. That I thought like, steep growth from like doing our business or from doing exchanges in high school was the steepest. Apparently not. This is even steeper. The learning curve and the I don't know, the velocity of growth. Here, I'm noticing how the world is very interconnected and similar in some trends. Like I very much like to make at least some like comparative analysis just for the sake of it has some like good value. For example, like being in South Korea and Seoul, the one of the most eastern points of the globe where I lived, um, and at first I thought, wow, like the language is different, the cultural space is different, but that's where I felt the most at home. It felt the most similar to Estonia. Why? Well, because it's extremely technological. It has a lot of technological progress. You can see it in the street, which is very similar to Estonia. Like there are robots walking there, literally delivering your food. There is a very reserved culture where you don't normally approach people. You have a lot of private space. That's the same. That's the case in Seoul also. It's very safe, except in Seoul, in the streets it's safe because there's a bunch of CCTV cameras. In Estonia, it's cultural, and there are also some cameras. Um, and there's and in Seoul, Seoul is in the north of South Korea. It is located. You can take a bus, a 1-hour bus to the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, and on the other side of the border is one very authoritarian, very isolationist country, which kind of starts to resemble the current trend in Russia, right? And there, when we were studying there were nuclear trials that North Korea was doing, nuclear bomb trials somewhere in their deserts. Uh, and I was shocked. I was asking like locals, and talking to all of the friends I had there. It was hard to make them, but I had a few. And I asked them, hey, how do you feel about the nuclear bomb trials that North Korea is doing? Like, what the hell? And they were like, oh, we're used to it. So it's a similar trend in Estonia too, right? All of the all of the decisions that the Russian government is making are becoming more and more isolationist, less democratic, more authoritarian, more extreme, um, and except Russia is targeting all of its war crimes towards Ukraine, but North Korea is doing some inhumane things for their own population internally.
Um,
So some similar trends also.
just a quick question before we dive into this cultural topic again. How are you funding your education? Because education in US can be really, really expensive, especially college education.
Yeah, thank you for asking. It is a great challenge, but it is possible. I'm funding it by myself. Um, so first, our university is cheaper than other US universities. It is only 37,000 per year total. Now, what we have in Minerva is a super cool thing called need-based financial aid. It means that every year we apply with our tax documents, we show how much our family earns, and based on that, Minerva gives us um, this bundle of things called scholarship, the biggest part, then a loan. Loan has a very similar percent, like 7%, which is very similar to Estonian um, student loan too, and a work study program, which means as we study, we can work for university in any of its departments, and we'll be earning a very cool salary that goes directly to us as our pocket money. And we work 1 hour a day, which means in a week it's like 7, 8 hours. That's my bundle of support. That is great because my family is extremely broke. We earn almost like very little, and based on that, I get almost maximum support. So I'm extremely grateful for that. But then there are things that are not included in the support, like flights, and flights are extremely expensive these days,
Yeah,
and health insurance and visa. These are
yeah,
all on us. So that's why you can see me right now and you can hear me speaking from Argentina, which is where we'll be studying next very soon. So I just moved here a bit earlier and I'm working in the US because it's very similar time zone and I'm working. Like we have a 4 month break, um, kind of, and both this year and the previous year, I always work. Like I never really had the break. I'm just switching from studies during academic year to working in the summer so that I can save up for the next academic year. So that's how I'm surviving. I'm always working somewhere new, always choosing opportunities that pay more instead of staying in our social enterprise. And another thing that helps to fund my education is amazing scholarships that Estonia has. Apparently, as an Estonian student abroad who is not even in an Estonian university can qualify for so many support opportunities. And for those, like I'm understanding that the audience here is not exactly the target. So if you want to know more about what scholarships and public support I'm using, just shoot me an email. But one of the or Facebook message. Like one of the examples is, for example, in 12th grade, our Ministry of Education runs this cool competition like application round for people who have gotten into universities abroad and
mm-hmm.
finishing their high school.
Mm-hmm.
And for them, this year they're open. It's called Noore Õpitlase Stipendium, the scholarship of a youth scholar. And they, after like one application round and one interview, they give you 5,000 just as a support for being a cool Estonian student going abroad. That's one of the things I received. I was very lucky to get that support, and also like I was very happy that my university was recognized because Minerva, when you explain it to people, it's a bit difficult to comprehend because it's really outside of the usual frames of a university,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's small and it's private, and we started only in 2014. It's very recent, nobody, it doesn't have a name yet. So we're really here like pitching all the time for it every time we talk to new people. So these are some opportunities, and that's how I'm funding it.
That's I think that's really encouraging to see because like one of the if 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 somebody in your condition or somebody who comes from similar social economic background, from like this Estonia with family who is barely making, ends meet, and then you could tell them that you could go to the US and you could fund your own education. I would laugh at that. Like I would say, how are you able to do that? But you are like an example yourself, and you are supporting it yourself, and the best part is that you have found things in the system that support you as well. Like the system there, for example, you're mentioning scholarships and then these programs that I think you like the key quality that you need to have is to be very to have a lot of determination that I want to do that, and then you just look for things that support you in that way. So I really feel that's a lot of encouraging, and that's like it's very easy to get disappointed and like dejected that I cannot do anything, or I was born, I was given, as we are talking before, like given these bad cards. But I think that you're a very good example of how this does not or should not be the thing that stops you. I mean, everybody moves differently, everybody has a different pace, but this doesn't mean that you just stop and sit.
Yeah, there's this like uh, psychologically called fixed mindset when you accept things as given and believe you don't have any control over them, and maybe something else has control. It's very complex, especially if you're religious.
Yeah.
It gets a bit complicated, like who has control over your life. And then there's the opposite of fixed mindset. It's like open. I forgot what it's called.
Flexible mindset, yeah, flexible.
I guess, yeah, it can be called flexible. It's when you take
Oh
your
yeah,
own
it's
control of your
growth mindset,
decisions.
I think. I think it's called growth
Growth
mindset.
mindset,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
precisely. And it's hard to get there. Like you need to really be extremely self-aware, be self-analytical, or get outside feedback. There are many ways to become self-aware. And then you acknowledge your mistakes. You need to be, again, aware of your mistakes, conceptualize them and mistakes, analyze them, and think, what can I do better? And take control over your own decisions and uh, really take the wheel of your own life truck and choose your own path, or if the path doesn't exist, create it.
Um,
It's very psychologically difficult too, because like I was lucky in the sense that I'm not facing any mental diseases at the moment.
yeah,
Some people are.
yeah. Uh, that's another thing we, that life gives you a card, right? Like your health, your physical and mental health. Like it's such a blessing to be mentally and physically healthy. Yeah. Um, are you religious yourself or not?
No, no. In the beginning of my life, I was kind of like forced to conform to my family, who were Methodist at first, and then they became Orthodox. And then I just didn't have very happy experiences in that church, in those all of those churches and monasteries that we went to. And at some point, I like there were just like grannies in the church, like always judging me, and I felt like always socially pressured there to do something. It didn't make much sense, and there was a lot of this like conformity. And at some point, like I was quite rebellious, and I said at one point, no, I'm leaving the monastery, and I took a bus home alone at 13 years old, and that was like the symbolic kind of my
Departure.
that personal diversion from yeah partition like from religion. But then yeah, I'm kind of like more of an agnostic. Like I'm still open and I'm happily exploring global religions and happily talking to people who have different faiths and trying to stay open to their views. And yeah,
I want to
what about
talk about.
you?
I'm religious. I'm a Muslim. So I was born and raised as a Muslim. Pakistan is a majority Muslim country as well, and I think there was a time when I was really not liking it, like the religion. What because if you grow up in a society as similar as you said, where it is forced, it sort of ruins the purpose and the meaning of religion itself as well. So I think when I moved abroad, when I came to Estonia, when you get out of the bubble and you get out of the society, I think that's when you have a much better ability to look to the system how it is, like the benefits and drawbacks and all these things. Because when you're inside, it's very difficult to look at thing how it is. And coming to Estonia and being in a completely non-religious country and getting out of that system, I slowly, started to unlearn a lot of things, and then I started to realize why religion says some things. What is the reason for that? Like, uh, why exactly is it there? It's not entirely obvious, because when you're born in a religion, then you don't, like, you don't think about it. You think of it like an obligation. Like, one of the simple example is that in Islam, you're encouraged to pray 5 times a day, right? It's an obligation, and usually what happens is, or what's encouraged is that you go to the mosque to do that. And if you do that 5 times a day, then, like, you can't help but build a community. Like, if everybody in this neighborhood, our main people, are going into the mosque, they're praying for like 15, 20 minutes, they're moving back, then you can't help but make a community. You can't help but, not feel lonely. You can't help but have that social connection as well. And I think I only felt that thing when like, the same thing goes for, like, church as well. What's the purpose of the church? Of course, it's to you have, religious reasons as well. But only when you get out of the system, when you see it from the outside, you tend to realize how these things are there. Why are these? And there's a lot for many different things. And I thought a lot of things seemed very oppressive and very, like, unreasonable. But then when I slowly applied to myself with them, I totally neglected those things. And then I realized that what is the essence of them. So I turned myself sort of like into a guinea pig, and then experimented myself. So yeah, that's sort of my religion story. But
Makes
coming back
sense.
to you, I would like to specifically ask about your experience in India. How long were you there? How was the cultural shock? How did it feel there? Because um, India is Asia, right? India is like a different world, and it's very closely linked to Pakistan as well. We have very similar cultures, languages, religion. So many Muslims living in India, and of course, Pakistan is a Muslim majority country as well. So, how was it for you there? How did you adopt? How did you? What was your cultural shock? And was there anything that stayed with you even till now? So.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. It was great and insane. And first, I wanted to mention how it ended. Like the very final days, we went with my classmates. We made a hike to a small mountain to a Muslim part of Hyderabad. Hyderabad is the city where we lived. It's in
Mm-hmm.
central slash south India. It's a quite a big city with a lot of tech companies and tech giants moving in recently. And we went to this hill it was April for sunset, and the sun was setting, and we started to hear all the prayers in that part of the city, and we started to hear all the groups like singing, and it was just such a magical moment. Uh, it was during Ramadan, and it was super, super cool. And that was one of the semesters where one of the crucial groups from Minerva didn't go. Like they went to a different place instead. Those were all of our classmates from Pakistan. They were not let into India, and I really miss them. And yeah, I really resonate with what you said about like how you feel community and belonging and during prayers and between prayers, because like at least what I learned from my classmates about their practice of Islam is it's a very loving and very caring and a very cool practice of religion where those people like it intertwines with all of the cultural aspects, and those are very welcome and very welcoming people who it's one of my dreams to go to Pakistan and spend some time with them to get to know like a bit more their families and their environment. But yeah, back now to India. That semester was honestly the most challenging semester in my life. Yeah, the hardest kind of like adjustment and living experience for me, because in living in a big city in the most populous country in the world, which it is right now, it was take everything I was used to in Estonia flip it
Yeah.
pretty much. Because like before that, we lived in Seoul, which I already said it was very similar, and in Taiwan, which was still very different from India. So just arriving there, um, it was always kind of, for the first time especially, adjustment was very long for me. It was hard for me to navigate how transportation works, how, because there are some buses, but they're not very reliable. You cannot just take them like you would in Tallinn. Um, you need to call a taxi with an app. You can do it. Like, of course, there's still a lot of apps and tech, but if you want to navigate it faster when there's a lot of traffic, you need to take a taxi, a Uber motorbike. So you take a motorbike or a rickshaw, I guess. Yeah, rickshaw is the easiest word. If you had to Google it, it's like a motorbike with like two more seats in the back added, and it has a roof, and it's a motor vehicle that is slower than a car that gets you through the city. That's also a mode of transportation.
Hmm.
A lot of those, and I love my peace. I love my calm. That was not the place for that. That was the opposite. That was extreme. Yeah, I would say extreme and constant chaos. This is the state of chaos where you want to, like, in childhood in Estonia, the way they teach us to cross the street is look left, look to the right. If there is no one, go. In India, it's the opposite. It's like you can look left and right and also sideways and up and down. And if there are cars moving, you should go because you need to get a feel of at what speed they're moving, and they will go around you. And you just need to keep going when everyone else is going. So it was a lot of relearning and unlearning as well for me. Like my body wasn't used to it too. Like, of course, it's different bacteria and different way of cooking stuff, um, and very different type of food also. Um, there was little meat, and the only meat there was primarily chicken, because like cow, of course, you cannot eat a cow in India, most of the places. Uh, and my body wasn't ready for that. Like I had poisoning for like 2 3 weeks, so it was quite tough physically. Uh, but that's, I guess, the the cleaning experience you go through. Uh, yeah, that semester I pooped in the most different shapes and colors. But I survived,
Yeah.
and it was, yeah, very eye-opening. Like I had to stay with my growth mindset until the very last day for uh, that whole
Yeah.
semester.
Yeah, yeah, and I think when you talk about the traffic, then one thing that I've also like sort of understood also is that you're talking about pedestrians, like people walking, but even in cases where you're driving in, for example, in Pakistan, it's quite similar in India as well. Like if you're going on the main road and there's somebody on the side road, right, and they're coming really fast. When I'm in Estonia, I know that that person will stop, right? They will not just
You're right.
get into the main. So I have this idea that this person will obey the law and they will do that. But in Pakistan, I will never think that. Like like that person with that momentum can easily come to the main road and then just drive. So so one cool like idea about this traffic and this is like it depends on how much momentum do you have. The more momentum you have, the more you're able, the more you can walk. So if you're walking really fast, and then people will notice and they will like move around you. So traffic will not stop. Traffic will
It
move
will.
around you. They will they'll never stop.
Yeah.
Um, okay, we're reaching to the end of our conversation, but I have just a couple of more questions. So, what's next for you? Right now, you're in studying uh, in a great college in the U.S. in California. You have traveled the world. You have seen so much just at the age of 22. What are your goals and aspirations right now?
Right. Yeah. Great question. It's so sad I didn't mention like we didn't get to like also social problems in Hyderabad because it's like a completely different level of like poverty and inequality that I've never
Mm-hmm.
seen. One of
Yeah,
the deepest
yeah,
and even more complex. Like that's such a diverse and such a complex country compared to Estonia.
yeah,
Like all of the inequality that like I come from, what's happening in India is just incomparable. It's
yeah,
just so much more complex.
yeah,
But going to right now, um, yeah, everything like as you said, you get the points of comparison to analyze your previous state once you get out of it, and you have more comparison points.
mm-hmm.
Uh, at this point, I'm extremely grateful for my experience, and I'm here in Argentina. Um, I'm trying to stay connected with home. In the moment, I'm volunteering in Estonian police, in web police. Um, at the moment, I'm working in the US this time because in Estonia I couldn't find a job. They had required me to be in person. I said no. Um, yeah. I'm learning Spanish because I love it, and I love Argentinian culture. It's so cool, and it's also not extremely different from Estonia. And I'm excited to study here, and after that we'll study in London. And professionally, I guess I'm excited to take on more opportunities to make impact through. I really want to go try maybe consulting uh, to work with a lot of different founders and gain expertise and do more analytical work at this moment. And then maybe try VC also. That's on my list professionally because I see it also as a great way to empower a lot of founders at the same time and also share my expertise, which I'm still yet to gather. Um, and in Minerva, after that, we'll study in Berlin and return back to San Francisco. And academically, I guess so far my biggest passion has been econometrics, which is working with data and designing causal studies with observational data, which means that if before you had to do RCTs to find, causal effect, what impacts something like, for example, our question today, like um, what blocks people from getting more education, or like what actually causes that? Those questions before, normally as a norm in science, you would do with RCTs to randomized controlled trials, which take a lot of time. Now you can take a data set, you can design a study, and if you have enough variables conceptualized and if they're like collected well, if you have reliable data, you can get similar results by simulating statistically um, randomization, and that's just amazing. I really want to do like my final project, I guess, using econometric methods. And yeah, I'm still yet to select a topic, but it will be either something similar, something from my previous internship in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, something about, I don't know, sanctions, something about the war, um, or something else. I'm not sure. Like I'm still iterating, updating my beliefs. And personally, I'm very excited to keep learning Spanish. I'm excited to keep growing, as a person who makes impact as an investor. I'm also volunteering in Binance Estonia and learning more about their products and Web3. I really want to keep advancing in that field too, and show more people that Web3 is a great space and a great world uh, that is, I believe, in many senses, the future. And yeah, I'm just excited to keep living today. Like, actually, today is going to be a great day also. Um, yeah, I don't have too many long-term future plans, but I have constraints. Like, of course, after I finish university, I'll have to go back to Estonia and do something for the good of Estonia because because I want to, because every summer I try to come back, and also because it's a requirement by the scholarship that we got in the end of 12th grade from the Ministry of Education. They want us to go back. Um, And yeah, not really, not sure what else. Like these are my current beliefs.
I mean, you're already doing so much. So coming, like wrapping up and with the final two questions that I usually ask people is, you've already done a lot or achieved a lot. What is your definition of success? What does success mean to you?
It's a very interesting conceptual question. Yeah, I'm usually not prepared or like don't have exact definition. But if I had to generate it now on the go, um, it is, you really can frame it as you want, like really just so that it fits your situation and your purpose. Generally, it's you set smart goals, like achievable goals for the future. You manage to achieve them, and you can call it a success for yourself, but you also have evidence that it happened and somebody else acknowledges it. So then socially, it also is a success. Yeah, I would say that's how I would frame it right now.
And then like final question, like what, who is an Estonian to you? Like what does, like who is exactly an Estonian? Who would you consider an Estonian? This is usually the question I ask all everybody from Estonia or born in Estonia that I meet.
Thank you for asking. There was recently in the local news this case with um, a music teacher in Narva who went out to the border on the 9th of May with a t-shirt saying that Putin is some swear word. Like, and then she was uh, forced to step down as a teacher, and there was a lot of like social discussion about this. Like, is it because she was offensive to the president of another country? Is it because? So yeah, it was very complex, and she said in her interview with the in the show Morning with Anu, she said there's a lot of internal division, and as long as we keep separating Estonia socially into us and them, because no, this is my own addition. This identity division is really just a social construct. As long as we keep believing that it exists, it will keep existing. So at this time, when there is a war, when I really just think about the consequences when you keep separating Estonia into us and them, and when you think about people who were born in Estonia and like at some level speak the language or want to learn the language and participate in the culture and pay the taxes just as you and use the same economic opportunities and your kids, enjoy the same education, it really is very harmful and it has a lot of negative consequences if we keep framing Estonia as ethnic Estonians and ethnic Russians and ethnic somebody else who just for who was not born in a family where Estonian is not the first language. Because this way, if we conceptualize, Russian speaking Estonians as them, as the Russians, then it is one of the things that brings them closer to control of Russian media space, for example, to be in that target region that it has always been in terms of, national security, to making it more vulnerable. Don't contribute to it. Don't give up our minorities. They are very much Estonian. All of the people who have come here, all of the people who have lived here and have done something as cool as like you, Manan, are doing, and all of the people who have been perhaps little time, but they are participating in the culture, participating in the economic system. And if they want to be Estonian, why not? So yeah, my big long-term vision is that we can expand the definition of Estonian beyond the native language and we can accept more people who want to be Estonian as Estonian too. Maybe then we get a bit more culturally flexible, inclusive, and warm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think you're a very great example of this whole future that we think about. So you're definitely leading by example. Um, I think we can wrap this up. It was a great conversation with you, Vlad. I had a really great time. I think I myself am very encouraged by your like optimism and the ability to not let adversity stop you. Uh, that's I think the core thing that I've seen because to meet people who are 22 years old, born and raised in that part of Estonia, and for them to like travel around the world, see different cultures, not just seeing different cultures, but live in those cultures and experience them, and all the while doing all that while supporting yourself, like earning yourself, doing everything yourself. I think that's I think you can be a very great role model for a lot of youth that is looking for guidance. I will put your Facebook and I think your LinkedIn link in the description as well, so people can reach out to you if they need any help. But thank you. It was great.
Yay! Thank you, Supermanan. I'm also very much moved by you and your activeness and your participation in Estonian culture and how you show it to the outside of the world of the Estonian world. Good job, and thank you so much for your time.
All right, everybody. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.